Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink with the cards that I referred to in my Simon Says Stamp Holly Jolly release and review video. I had said I had this specific idea in mind with these background stamps. So that's what I'm making in today's video. So I started with some Neenah Desert Storm cardstock and I just cut the sheet in half. So I am creating two card bases. And then I'm scoring it at 5.5 inches, so both of these will be top folding A2 size cards. Once I have my card bases ready to go, I pulled out my MISTI and the outline Merry Christmas background. So I have to remove the foam insert from my MISTI because this is a red rubber on cling foam stamp. And I just kind of butt that up in the lower corner of my MISTI. And then for my card base, I am going to go upside down. I've shown this in a bunch of videos, but I just kind of lined it up. It doesn't need to be like perfectly lined up, but I just want to make sure that the stamp is going to stamp the entire card front. So I'd lined it up on top of the stamp and then just closed my MISTI upside down so that it was placed a little higher up. And then I used some Post-it tape just to mask off the area what'll be the back of the card, right at the score line there. So mask that off, anti-static powder, brushed off the excess, and then I'm going to stamp this with clear embossing ink. And I could have done like what I've shown in a ton of videos, just inking up the stamp face up on my desk and pressing the card front into it. But I wanted to use the MISTI because I had a feeling, and with this one I did need to stamp it more than once. I wanted to make sure it didn't need to be a perfect impression, but I wanted to make sure I had everything inked up. So once I've got it stamped on here, and that little white doohickey is a whiteboard eraser. I've been using that lately and I'm really liking it, so I'm not having to press so much with my hands, because the older I'm getting, and especially this cold weather, I'm really starting to feel it. My hands are starting to hurt. So anything that helps with that. So anywho, I was originally going to do these cards and I was going to heat emboss in white. And then right as I sat down and started making them, I was like, I wonder what red would be like. So I'm using Tonic Nuvo's SPORTSCAR red embossing powder. This is another question I get asked a lot. What is the like reddest red embossing powder? I literally only own a couple, but out of those couple of embossing powders I have that are red, this one is the most, I would call it like a cherry red, you know, that blue red? That would be this one. So, however, just like anything with red, and I talk about this other times with like red inks, red watercolors, red Copic markers, anything with red pigments in it, treat it with caution, I guess is the word I'm trying to think of. Red pigments like to just go where they're not supposed to. Red pigments like to just not work like other things. So they emboss them beautifully. Like this embossing powder is great. It's not the emboss powder. It's red. So my plan originally was I was going to heat emboss these in white on this Desert Storm cardstock and then do some oxide ink blending over it. Still going to do this. However, this is where red comes into play. So while I'm saying all this, I did the exact same process, but I used the Holiday Words background stamp just because I wanted both. I wanted to do cards with both. And this whole time I've shown I did the heat embossing in red on the outside. And then before removing the stamp from a MISTI, I stamped the insides of the cards doing the exact same process with just the clear embossing ink. So I get that watermark effect on the inside. So this is where I was vividly reminded of, you know, red pigments. So I'm blending tumbled glass Distress Oxide ink over this background. And it doesn't show up as much on camera, but I can see it in person. And I started noticing that it was just starting to turn the teeniest bit purple. And I realized those red, because this is such a, you know, bright, vibrant embossing powder. And again, it wouldn't matter what embossing powder you use. If it's like bright red like this, it'll almost for sure do the same thing. It's just red. Red likes to just penetrate everything. So anywho, I started noticing it, and it's not the end of the world. Like, it's not ruining my card, but I can't do this on the second card front. Like, it works okay on this because it's the thin lines with this outline Merry Christmas background. So I'm okay with this because it's not really turning purple. It just, I can just see it a bit. But this one with like the bold red, I'm rubbing over this. It's all heat embossed. It's all melted with a piece of paper towel, and it is picking up red pigment. So I knew with that one, if I tried ink blending over it, my ink blending sponge is just going to pick up more and more red. And rather than fight with it, I just changed my little tactics a bit, and I pulled out my tumbled glass Distress Oxide spray and just lightly sprayed that. And that just saved me. It was perfect. I didn't spray it heavily because I didn't want to completely cover the Desert Storm cardstock, because again, I love me some Desert Storm. I love this craft color. It's so perfect. So I ended up doing this with both card bases. With this one that I already did the blending on, I just did a couple light mists. Did it in my splat box. I was using washi tape just to hold the cards closed because I didn't want to get a ton of spray on the inside. I still got a little bit along the edges, but I'm not worried about it. And then with both of these, because I've sprayed it, the spray is sitting on top of the embossed areas, which again isn't the end of the world. But I still wanted that red, you know, to remain fairly vibrant. So I just took a piece of paper towel and pressed that onto the backgrounds first. So it picked up most of the spray that's sitting on the embossed areas. It's already soaked into the cardstock, so I'm not worried about using it to rub on top of this. So I'm just kind of rubbing off the excess ink on that embossing, and it's good to go. And then of course I'm going to add white splatter because it's Christmas cards. Christmas, holiday, winter. I can splatter all the things, all of them. So I'm just splattering white paint, just Picket Fence Distress Paint. I just used a little plastic palette here because I started out conservatively, just a few little splatters, and then of course I splattered it all. Splatter all the paint, and then off camera I ended up adding even more because why not? So splattered that all over those backgrounds and then set them aside to dry. And then I have a bunch of die cuts here to like make my card design. So I have the new Peace wafer dies, and I die cut the word a couple times from heavyweight white cardstock. And then I cut it again from Simon's silver glitter paper. So I'm going to stack those two white die cuts together and then add glue on top and then put the glitter paper on top of that. So I have this nice and dimensional die cut. And then the outline I had die cut from vellum. So I'm going to add that to the vellum outline. And I do all of this twice because I'm doing 2 cards. Honestly, I would have done a ton because this is one that I really love this design, but as always, time's running away from me. So anywho, I'm also using some reverse sentiment strips. These you can foil. I thought about it, but I've got like splatter and glitter, and I honestly didn't have the room. I didn't have space to pull out the ink in my foils. I'm like working in a corner, you know, I'm like shoved up against my desk as I'm doing this voiceover. I'm surrounded. I have to clean out everything again. Anywho, I cut down those sentiment strips. And the sentiments originally said peace to you this season. Well, I cut off the peace part because I had the die cut word. And then I just quickly went around those edges with my Memento Tuxedo black marker. Because with those, when you cut them, it exposes the white cardstock. So it just gives it a little bit more of a finished look if you're not going to foil them or anything. To use the marker and cover those edges. And then the snowflake is the new Sophie Snowflake from Simon Says Stamp that I love. I didn't pop out all the little pieces. I left some intact. The rest I popped out. But I die cut that from white cardstock. Adhered that to my card base with craft tacky glue. And then these little elements that I'm adding glue to, these are from the Christmas Foliage wafer die set. This came out years ago. I'm not even sure when. 2019? Was it last year or the year before? I can't remember. I bought them last year at least. Anyway. Die cut those from more of that silver glitter paper, as well as some of Simon's Sea Glass cardstock, and just kind of adhered those on top of the snowflake. And then once I was happy with that, I'm going to adhere that piece die cut right on top, just applying the adhesive to right behind the actual word so it doesn't show through the vellum. And then the little sentiment, the reverse sentiment strip, that I'm going to adhere with one of my Derice foam tape strips. Just cut that down and then I can pop that into place, and I'm going to do the exact same thing on the second card front. So then I've got both of my card fronts basically complete. I'd also trimmed out a couple of those reverse sentiment. There was a couple of like larger sentiments or phrases. So I'd cut those down and adhered those to the insides of the cards just to finish off the inside. And like I always say, you could always end here, but of course I'm not going to. I went through my stash of Studio Claudia crystals and pearls and gems and pulled out colors that went with these cards. So I've literally got red, blue, silver, white. I have scarlet red crystals, I have prismatic sky pearls, I have silver foil crystals, and of course some white, which are snow crystals. So sprinkled those a little heavily throughout these cards, and then adhered them into place with dabs of the Craft Tacky glue and just picking them up with my little embellishment wand. And then still kind of kept adding. Every time I thought I was done, I was like, ooh, I can stick one more here. I can stick one more here. Why not? It's Christmas cards. They're fun. You can kind of go all out with the splatter and the bling and the glitter and have fun with it. So anywho, that was my cards for today. I will have a link below the video to my blog post. That'll have the pictures. It'll have picture links to all the supplies, all that info, as well as a supply list will be in the description box below. So you can check that out below if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching, for subscribing, thumbs upping, commenting. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.